Hello everyone, my name is Brett Thompson, owner of the old Woodchip. I specialize in carving salmon and steelhead, fish of the Pacific Northwest. Today we're going to carve a king salmon. Well, finding the wood is something I pride myself on, finding the right piece for the right fish. A lot of people come up to me with a picture of a fish and want a certain fish carved, and I really strive to find the right piece of wood for that. A lot of times when I'm looking for this wood, I try and find pieces that already have natural twists and natural movement in it, and that's where you can visualize that fish in there and let your imagination kind of run with how you're going to carve this fish. I like to use maple when I carve. It's a beautiful hardwood, it's got a lot of character in it, and it holds detail really well. Now, I don't like to paint my carvings when I'm done with them. I like to leave a natural wood. I'm a wood nut, and I think that one should complement the other. Okay, so now that we've got it cut open, we can see where the grain is in the wood. Fish are darker on the top half than on the bottom, so we're going to incorporate that into the wood. With this piece right here, as you can tell, we've got a big fan right here where his tail will fit. And if you look down the contour of this, he'll actually take an S-turn, and the dorsal fin will sit back into here, into this right here. The end of his nose is the end of this point. This is just a real basic rudimentary outline. I'm actually going to carve a little bit bigger than my outline so that I have enough room to make this fish work. I don't want to carve him so small and then not have room for muscle tones and body movement and that kind of thing. We're going to use a couple different saws with this. I'm going to start off with a big one. We'll get a lot of this big wood off of here. And then we'll go ahead and get down to my carving saw and we can start the shaping process. Well, all my fish have a story behind them, and this one's no exception. This one happens to be of a fish that a buddy of mine, Terry, and I caught out on the Columbia River. It was his first salmon, and it had a seal mark on the side of it where a seal had attacked it.
I'm getting a carving.
Now, we searched for a piece of wood, the right piece of wood to make this with, and I finally found it. The piece of wood had a seal mark right on the same spot where his fish was marked. So we incorporated that into the fish. And therefore, when you come in, they're a great conversation piece. People come over and they see the fish on the wall, and where'd you get that? It's a great chance to sit down and have that conversation, and your story lives on. The fishing story lives on. So it's a really cool aspect of what I do. Being a fisherman all my life and being hooked on steelhead, especially, and salmon of the Pacific Northwest at a real young age, they've always captivated me. Just magical moments of thinking of that big fish laying under the log and how am I going to hook him, and the guy standing next to me on the riverbank and he's catching all the fish and I'm wondering how he's doing it. Well, those are things that I try and incorporate into my carvings. I want to show the power that these fish have in their tails and the muscle tones and everything having movement. Okay, so now what I'm going to go ahead and do is draw a basic form of the fish on here, where I want the fin, the dorsal fin, where I want the jaw line and all that stuff. And we'll start removing a little bit more wood and reducing this thing into a little more of a fish shape. Got started in carving unintentionally. I was actually being in construction and whatnot when the economy went south on everybody. I got hit hard just like everybody did. And being at work, low self-esteem, all of that, trying to keep myself busy. Kind of weird thing, we had a big windstorm, ice storm that came up and knocked over some trees on the property. So I'd gone out and I'd cut down the trees and moved them out of the way, but there was a big stump that was left sticking out of the hillside. I went out one day and figured I'd carve a frog sitting on the mushroom for my girlfriend. And so I did. I carved a frog sitting on a mushroom, and it turned out pretty well, I thought. And I got a lot of pats on the back for it. I thought, well, heck, I'm a fisherman. I've been a fisherman my whole life. I know what a fish looks like. So I'm going to go down and carve a fish. And I did. First couple were pretty small, pretty rudimentary, one-dimensional. And after about the third one, I just decided, I wonder how far I can take this. So I used all the tools that I basically had. I've never had any formal training at this. I just winged it, and I carved a fish. Turned out really well. And since then, it's just been striving to do one better than the other one and learn my trade and learn the craft of it. Okay, so now, as you can see, we've got the main shape and the body movement of him very squared off. That's what we call it, blocking it out. So he's all blocked out. So now what I'm going to do is take my small chainsaw and we're going to start rounding these corners and softening him up and trying to bring him, reduce him all at once, you know, a little at a time, all the way through the fish. So again, everything's symmetrical. Okay, we've got it blocked out. We've got the corners knocked off. She's semi-rounded. Now we're going to start to sand and soften it up. Angle grinders are one of my main tools. I use also the floppy disc as well as the sturdier but rounded sanding discs. They really help with my shaping. So that's what we're going to do next. Floppy sanding discs are a huge part of what I do. They're flexible, they give me that rounding shape that a fish naturally has and allows me to draw down the fish and get smooth strokes, and it's not quite so chunky. It smooths everything along those lines. I'll knock off all the tool marks. That'll tell me where my lumps are, where the parts of the fish that I have to sculpt down to in order to match the rest of it. And I slowly just look down the fish and sculpt as I go by drawing that sander down. Then we'll come back in with a floppy disc sander again. And I'll start to add muscle tones and body shaping. Where any movement is, one side will have a pocket and the other side will have a protrusion. So you want to make those adjustments with that floppy disc sander. And then what I'll do after I've done that, and I make them a little heavy at first, I'll come back in with the palm sander and smooth everything out and knock off all the hard edges to the muscle tones. Okay, now that we've got the basic shape of the fish, we've got him pretty well rounded off, I went ahead and laid the face in on here so I could get the attitude of the fish, decide where I'm going to put my muscle tones in, and we'll go from there. So now the fish is starting to develop character. I'll come in and put the gills in there. The muscle tones are starting to come together and everything's starting to come together as one. So I can really sense the attitude and the style of this fish, and it tells me whether he's going to be an aggressive look on his face, whether it's going to be, whether he's got a closed mouth, whether he's hunting. All of that comes into my mind. And I guess it all comes back to being a fisherman and always thinking about that big fish laying under that log and what he's doing and how am I going to hook him, and all of that comes into play. And the mouth is one of the hardest things for me. Again, I spend a lot of time on that, more so than any other part of the fish. You have to slowly do that. Everything has to be reduced. I'll open the mouth up and then I'll come in with a T-slot cutter and I'll lay in where I want the teeth inside of that. And then I slowly reduce the mouth line and the gum line to pull it back in order to get those teeth in there. At that point, once I've got that done, I'll go ahead and lay the teeth in, and then I'll come back and reduce even more and give it some texture, some snarl in the lip, give him a facial quality to enhance that look. And it really personalizes the fish by doing that. Each one of these is definitely a piece of myself. I spend a lot of time with these things. I know every centimeter of these fish. And by spending so much time with them, they actually become a part of you, and some of them are hard to kind of get rid of. I like the fact that these things will be handed down from generation to generation and, you know, become more of a family heirloom, and that story will constantly get told of Grandpa's great fishing trip. I think that kind of really makes it worthwhile right there. One of the key things that I get asked by almost everybody is about the fin work that I do. They, you know, boy, it must have taken you forever to do those fins. And actually, although it looks that way, it's not that way at all. I found a really neat technique that I use with my angle grinder and abrasive cutoff blade that really cuts down the time on doing that, and it gives it a look of that you spent hours and hours upon it. It's a neat trick. It's my trick, so I am glad that nobody taught me, and my techniques are my own. With the fins, I go ahead and use the bandsaw to cut them out with. It's a lot faster and safer than using the chainsaw. Once I've got them cut out with the bandsaw, I'll go ahead and break out the sander with the floppy disc, and I'll shape them to the desired shape that I want. Once I've got that on there and the fin looking the way I want, I'll come in with my abrasive cutoff blade on my Dremel tool. Okay, so we've got the fins made, we're going to go ahead and put the final dowel in and get these lower fins installed. The pectoral fins of the anal fins are the only sets of fins that aren't carved into the fish for two reasons. One, I can get more detail on the fins that way, and two, those are the ones that are more likely to get broke off, and if they do get broke, I can replace those in 15-20 minutes. If they break off and they're carved into the fish, it's a lot harder to get those things back to looking the way they should be. So once we're done with the fins and sanding the mouth, we'll go ahead and start with the finishing process, which is the staining, the oiling, and the lacquering of the fish. Fish are two-tone. They're darker on the top half than they are on the bottom half. And we did incorporate that into the wood, but I think that we just need another darker shade. And so I'll go ahead and put a stain on the back of it and sponge sand the excess off of there, which really makes the grain come out a lot stronger and gives me that second shading that I'm looking for. Well, I like to use the oil on there so it really brings out the grain and gives it a lustrous look to it. It really makes the grain pop and stand out. So we'll oil it down first, let that absorb into the wood and hold that luster or color, and then we'll go ahead and put the lacquer over the top of that so that we can preserve that look. When I do the eye, I struggled with that for a while to figure out the right method. I'd use paint and different aspects to try and get the look I was looking for, and I ended up settling by using a felt marker. By taking and drawing it out with a felt marker and then spraying it lightly with lacquer, I can get that puddling and that glossy look that I'm really looking for out of the eyeball. Now for the lacquering process, what we'll do is run a screw down his mouth and hang him by a rope so that I can get an even coat of lacquer across the entire fish, and we're not laying it down on one side or the other. All right, everybody, this is Terry. He's the one who caught the salmon out there on the Columbia. We're going to go ahead and do the unveil, and I hope you guys like it.
Oh, yeah.
Here you go, Terry. Your first king salmon.
Oh, man. That is bitchin' looking. Golly. Man, that just came out so good. I can't believe it. Man, what a great job.
Like it, my
awesome, friend? Dude. I don't even know where I'm going to put it. I just want to hug it. This thing is... Oh, look at that. It's got a scar and everything.
Thank you for watching. Just remember, if you can dream it, we can carve it.